Here's a question nobody asks about modern air combat. What happens to a pilot's brain when you hand him a drone wingman, a fused radar picture from an aircraft he can't see, and a missile that fires before his own radar even locks on? The old answer was to train him harder. Flying harder equals flying better. Faster reflexes, sharp stick and radar skill, more hours in the cockpit. The Pakistan Air Force answer, since 2021, has been almost the opposite. Fly less, think more. Because in a networked, manned, unmanned, multi-domain flight, the pilot who wins isn't the best flyer in the formation. He's the one who can process the most information without freezing. That is Project Phoenix, the reformation that takes PAF pilots from preparing a 20th century war to a 21st century networked battle space. This episode is about what Project Phoenix actually is and why its timing lines up with PAF's hardware transformation more than PAF's own messaging admits. Everything in this episode has been pieced together through open source research because unlike Indian defense media, the PAF doesn't run a publicity operation around its internal reforms. There's no press conference for this. What exists is scattered across magazine features, academic workshop records, and think tank roundtable transcripts. That's consistent with an institution that implements quietly and lets performance speak, which also means we have to work harder to separate what's documented from what's simply being repeated. I'm Qasim, and you're watching Radar Mode, and today we talk about the Project Phoenix. Air Chief Marshal Zahir Ahmed Babar Sidhu took over as Chief of the Air Staff on 19th March 2021. A career fighter pilot commissioned in April 1986 who'd commanded a squadron, a flying wing, an airbase, and a regional air command before reaching the top job. His tenure has since been extended more than once, notably after the PAF's performance in the May 2025 conflict with India, an event that we'll come back to. According to PAF's own reporting, ACM Sidhu made training reform a priority from his very first address as Chief of Air Staff. The internal logic: modern air combat has outgrown technical proficiency plus discipline. A PAF officer now has to operate inside drone warfare, cyber and electronic warfare, and joint networked force structures. And the existing training pipeline hasn't kept pace. That review became Project Phoenix, the officer training pillar of a broader initiative called the Next Generation Training Program, or NGTP, which also covers expanded simulated investment and cyber and drone operations instructions. Project Phoenix specifically owns who the PAF selects and produces. Its stated objective repeats across PAF-linked publications: leaders of character and competence. Note the order of the two. Character first. The engine room for this project is the Jinnah Centre for Character and Leadership, or JCCL, at PAF Academy Asghar Khan in Risalpur, described by PAF sources as Pakistan's first dedicated character and leadership center. It traces back to at least late 2022. Boston University's Pardee School records a workshop convened by the newly formed JCCL on 11th of November 2022 with Dean Emeritus Adil Najam advising on the curriculum. The curriculum runs on what instructors call the PITO or the PITO model. 4 progressive stages cadets have to move through across training. Personal skills, which is individual role competence. Interpersonal skills, which is communication within a crew and across branches. Teamwork, operating as a cohesive unit. And organizational skills, leadership and decision making for those who will eventually command others. Underneath PITO sit 10 named attributes: character, warrior ethos, transcendence and temperance, time management and discipline, teamwork, mental agility, effective communication, mental robustness, social intelligence, and organizational safety management. JCCL's Deputy President, Air Commodore Salman Mahmood, says instructors are expected to identify which attribute applies to a given lesson and build it deliberately, which is why the center ran Train the Trainer courses before training a single cadet. Instructors are meant to model the 10 attributes, not just teach around them. That's a deliberate break from the older model where instructors were selected mainly for technical ability and character development was left to whatever example they happened to set. JCCL's President, Air Commodore Shabir Ahmed, known within the service as Shabir Angel, is credited with a profile built around mentorship rather than pure academic administration. The clearest evidence of how seriously the PAF is taking this is time itself. A May 2024 feature in the PAF magazine Second to None described Project Phoenix extending a specific officer training track from 2 years to 4, doubling the runway available to produce each graduate. That's not a scheduling adjustment. 2 years may seem enough to teach someone to fly an aircraft competently. 4 years is what it takes to also teach him to operate inside a fused, multi-domain battle space, to read a satellite downlink, understand where his aircraft sits inside an electronic warfare picture, know what a naval or ground-based sensor is also contributing to his target track, and manage a drone teammate all before he's flying operationally. The degree was also renamed from Aviation Sciences to Aviation Management, partly for international accreditation, but the practical effect is also a curriculum built to produce an officer who can manage a battle space, not just fly through one. Institutional messaging has always been precise about which layer of academy this restructuring touched. It's a specific track within a 4-year program. Not a change to the academy's overall length, but the direction is absolutely unambiguous. The PAF is spending twice the training time it used to and spending it on integration across domains. Not just airmanship, PhD qualified and specialized faculty recruitment, and a formalized physical fitness curriculum with staged benchmarks, replacing what Base Commander Air Commodore Kashif Jamal describes as previously unstructured training. Cadets were expected to be fit, but with no defined milestones lying progress to the training timeline. PF sources also describe an increasingly digitized selection process with reduced human discretion, standing quotas for candidates from Balochistan and Gilgit-Baltistan, and rising female cadet intake. Every 6 months, JCCL runs a 360-degree assessment against the 10 attribute framework through a dedicated assessment lab built as a part of the center's infrastructure. Here's the connection PF's own messaging underplays. Project Phoenix's build-out lines up almost exactly with the PF's shift into network beyond visual range warfare. Since 2021, the PAF has taken delivery of J-10C fighters carrying the PL-15E BVR missile and brought JF-17 Block 3s online with the KL-7A ASA radar, a helmet-mounted display, and integrated electronic warfare. All of this is stitched together with Link-17, the PF's indigenous tactical link, bridging J-10Cs, JF-17s, F-16s, SAB Ariais, and ZDK-03s, all of these airborne early warning aircraft, and ground-based air defenses into a single shared tactical picture. In the May 2025 conflict, J-10Cs and JF-17 Block 3s of the Pakistan Air Force made history by launching PL-15 missiles, scoring multiple kills while staying electronically silent, cued entirely by AWACS radar feeds over Link-17, denying opposite aircraft the radar lock warning they'd normally get before a missile arrived. That kind of engagement isn't primarily a stick and rudder skill. It's a trust and information management problem. A pilot has to act on sensor data from a platform they can't see, communicate tightly on a shared picture, and make a launch decision under time pressure using someone else's radar. Get any of that wrong, hesitate too long processing a fuse track, misread a handoff between an ADI crew and a fighter formation, or fail to trust an AWACS queue over your own instincts, and the technical edge of this brand new amazing ASA radar or a 145 kilometers missile range just doesn't seem to matter. That's precisely the layer PITO is built to produce. The model's own progression from personal competence through interpersonal and team skills to organizational judgment mirrors almost exactly the shift the PF needed from its own officer corps as it moved from independent single ship intercepts to a fleet that fights as one networked system. Mental agility and mental robustness, 2 of the 10 named attributes, map directly onto managing sensor overload and staying decisive during a high-tempo, electronically contested exchange. Effective communication maps onto exactly the kind of tight, standardized reporting a Link-17 formation needs when an F-16 and a JF-17 are sharing target tracks through a bridged gateway. The skills the 10 attributes describe are close to a direct list of what a networked kill chain actually demands from a human in the loop. There's a second layer to this that PF messaging only touches in passing, and it matters just as much as the character framework. Project Phoenix is also where the PAF is formally teaching its officer corps to think in manned-unmanned terms. The NGTP umbrella that Project Phoenix sits under explicitly folds in drone operations and cyber instructions alongside the character curriculum, not as an elective, but as a core officer formation. That's a deliberate signal. A generation ago, an unmanned platform was something a separate squadron flew and a fighter pilot just deconflicted around. Under the doctrine taking shape now, the fighter pilot is expected to understand that platform well enough to fight alongside it, tasking it, trusting its sensor feed, folding the picture into its own decision-making in real time. That's the essence of manned-unmanned teaming, or MUMT, a loyal wingman drone absorbing risk, extending sensor reach, or carrying an extra weapon, while the human pilot stays the decision maker. Pakistan's own work on this, the Kizarelma-linked loyal wingman concept we covered in a previous episode, only works operationally if the humans flying alongside it have been trained to manage that relationship instead of being overwhelmed by it. A pilot who has spent his entire career as a solo operator doesn't intuitively know how to supervise an autonomous or semi-autonomous asset under time pressure. That has to be built deliberately. And it's precisely the gap Project Phoenix's expanded curriculum is aimed at closing. The payoff is reduced cognitive workload married to expanded situational awareness. Link-17 alone already asks a pilot to act on someone else's radar track. Add a drone wingman's video and sensor feed, an AWACS queue, and ground-based air defense data, and the raw volume of information a single cockpit has to manage multiplies very, very fast. The PAF's bet is that if you train officers from day one to filter, prioritize, and act on fused multi-source data, rather than treating that as an advanced skill bolted on after flight training, you get pilots who absorb more information without it costing them more time to decide. Less mental effort spent parsing what a screen is showing them, more capacity left over for the actual tactical decision. That reframes what a PAF fighter pilot is expected to be. Stick and rudder skill hasn't stopped mattering, but it's no longer the ceiling on what makes an officer valuable in a cockpit. The PAF is training toward pilots who function as multi-domain sensor operators. They are as comfortable reading a satellite cued target track or electronic warfare threat picture as they are flying an intercept, because the battle space they're being sent into fight no longer separates clearly into land, air, and sea, space, and cyber. It's one picture, assembled from all of them at once, and the officer in the cockpit is expected to be fluent in reading it, not just fluent in flying through it. And it will only matter more going forward. The indigenous PFX fighter program and a possible negotiated bridge to the J-35 fifth generation capability both push forward towards sensor fusion and human-machine teaming, meaning the officer's judgment call, not raw airmanship, becomes an even larger share of what determines an engagement's outcome. JCCL's curriculum matured through 2022 and 2025, the exact window the PF's networked BVR fleet came online. In May 2025, Pakistan and India fought a conflict in which PF claims to have shot down 8 Indian aircraft, including Rafales, using J-10Cs and JF-17 Block 3s queued by ARI and ZDK-03 AWACS over Link-17. ACM Sidhu's tenure was extended afterwards, and PF sources credit him with a historic victory. What matters for this episode is how PF has folded that conflict into the Project Phoenix story. At a CASS Lahore roundtable in October 2025, Air Commodore Khalid Barouri, identified as senior advisor to Project Phoenix, argued the May 2025 outcome proved the character-first doctrine works, that integrity and moral strength remain the ultimate multipliers of combat power. CASS Lahore's president went further, contrasting PF's culture with what he called a politicized Indian Air Force susceptible to false claims. Project Phoenix tells you where PF's institutional priorities sit. This is a force chasing hardware modernization, PFX, continued JF-17 Block 3 production, a possible J-35A bridge to 5th generation capability, while simultaneously building how it selects and culturally shapes the people who will operate that hardware inside a networked kill chain. This is not a small bet. It means treating officer development as infrastructure on the same footing as an ASA radar or a data link, on the theory that the fleet's network capability is only as good as the judgment of the humans reading the fuse picture. The US Air Force Academy has run a comparable center for character and leadership development since 2016 for the same underlying reason. Technical training alone keeps failing to produce good judgment under pressure. JCCL's version does the same structural job, reinforcing a specialized and customized Pakistani military identity, not just producing competent officers. Whether Project Phoenix actually produces better networked, more BVR-capable decision makers than a system it replaced is already answering itself, as cohorts trained entirely under it reach command. What we can be certain about is it's a real institutional investment, a curriculum built for the kind of warfare the PF is now actually fighting, a clear trajectory from a 20th century war to a 21st century multi-domain network-centric battle space. That's all from Radar Mode this week. If this episode gave you a clearer picture on Project Phoenix, like the video, subscribe to Pakistan Connect, and share it with others who might appreciate it. Share your comments, tell us what you think and what we missed, tell us what you want us to cover next. We read all your comments. My name is Qasim and you've been watching Radar Mode on Pakistan Connect. Stay informed, stay sharp, and I'll see you all next week.